Welcome everyone, good evening. It's 7 o'clock, so I will call to order the regular board meeting of the Downers Grove Park District and ask for a roll call.
Bender?
Here.
Mr. Dahlstrom?
Here.
Mr. Katula?
Here.
Mr. Lunt?
Here.
Ms. McDonald?
That is, we should do like that. I want to join us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
For which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do you have any changes to the agenda?
Not at this time.
And next I'll ask Eric to explain about our next item.
Thank you. Commissioner Dahlstrom is absent due to illness, one of the recognized reasons authorized by the Open Meeting Act and district policy, and is requesting to participate remotely. As it is a qualifying basis for absence, and as there is physical quorum present, a motion to allow such remote participation would be in order.
So moved, Mr. President.
Then second, we have a roll call, please.
Mr. Lunt?
Aye.
Mr. Bender?
Aye.
Mr. Katula?
Aye. Welcome, John. Okay, next item under our communications, and our first item is the recognition of visitors. Johnson, you'd like to, yeah, to do it, just go to the podium and please start with saying your name and address for the record.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Howard Johnson. My address is 5339 Carpenter Street, Downers Grove here. Is that it? Okay. So I'm here to talk to you about, I would like a change in an existing practice at the Marduk Community Garden plots. Give you a short little background. I've been gardening there for, I wanted to say over 15 years, but I didn't have time to double check that. So let's say it's over 10 years. I have 5 plots. I raise vegetables to donate to local food pantries. Currently, I take all of that over to the West Suburban Community Pantry over in Woodridge. It's off of Hobson Road. Last year, we donated about 1,300 pounds of produce. This year, as of last night, we're up to 939 pounds. So it looks like I have another 1,300 pounds there. I also conduct the gardening merit badge for scouting. This year, just recently, the 6 scouts, troops 95 and 595 completed the gardening merit badge. Plus, they also helped with the work there for taking care of the garden plots. So each year, the last couple of years, I've asked to meet with Kevin and at the time Mike Stelter about my experiences and what I think should change, to share my opinion, because if nobody says anything, things will always be the same. So I learned Mike retired after a long career. Good to hear. I'm enjoying my retirement. And so I met with his replacement, Blake Annis. Did I?
That's correct.
Yeah. So Blake met with me. I walked through some things about what I would like to have changed. And he was a great listener. We had a good dialogue. So I wanted to meet with you as the board here to tell you that he's great, listened to me. I appreciate that, making the time. And there's one specific thing I wanted to share with you that I shared with him and explain to you why. I do have some audio-visual aids here that I'm going to use here, some sophisticated ones here just to lay it out. Green is good, red is bad. And let me talk to you about the one thing I'd like you to change. So every fall and every spring, the Park District engages an outside vendor, I assume a local farmer, not too many around here in DuPage County, but somewhere, comes along and turns the soil over. They don't use, it's not a tilling practice, it's actually disking. And so disking does turn over the soil, but what it does is that it does a really good job of creating furrows. And in your mind, I'd like for you, for this meeting presentation, to substitute for the word furrow, like natural green gutter. So what happens is that these furrows are created every year because the farmer only goes from west to east, east to west. The plots are along rectangles that go from east to west, and there's two large ones, right, with a road in between. And that this person that's engaged only goes east-west, not north-south. And what's happening is that the plots where I am, which is the northeastern section, has a slight incline. And so every spring with the rains that we get, that we're sorely missing now, wash away loose soil. And it's been happening every year, and it's getting worse. To give you an idea, there are 3 large gullies that are coming through and changing the topography of my plots. The largest one is 12 to 15 inches deep from the soil being washed away every spring, okay? So I asked Blake, I said, stop it. Stop disking, stop turning over the soil. It doesn't help me. It harms me for many reasons. So I'm gonna go over those with you here today. So with washing away, the erosion is there, and I consider that a bad thing. By the way, most farmers that do it for a living, if they are disking, they will disc perpendicular to the incline. You see that when you drive out in the country, right? There's a hill. They won't go up and down the hill with their disking, they go perpendicular. So that's bad. Got one here, right? And you're paying for this to be done, which is, that is bad, because you're paying for something that's harming me. Plots. So what's left with either my soil that I paid for to be delivered, to improve, to create my raised beds, or by adding sand and making the soil looser, all of that gets washed away every year, a big chunk. So that's bad. Okay. And each May, because of the disking, I have to recreate my garden from scratch. I estimate, now I have 5 plots. A lot of people only have 1. I estimate it takes me 40 to 60 man hours to recreate my garden every year. Okay? So I'm going to say that's bad. So I would prefer not to spend that time recreating something I created the prior year. So I practice no-till. And that is until this year, because so much soil got washed away this year that I had to rent a rototiller from whatever they are over on Ogden Avenue and break up the clay. Clay is so bad this year because all my good soil got washed away. So I had to pay for it. And then I had to wrestle with that rototiller. It's the front kind. I should have rented the one that you walk behind. So I'm up to 5 bad things here. And so in addition to that, I believe with no-till, your garden, your soil health is a combination of insects, worms, bacteria, fungi, and by tearing it up, turning it over, you're disturbing that. That's my belief. I have some scientific stuff about it that I could share with you on that, but just say that's my belief, that I would prefer my soil to be left alone. Because I'm improving it, I'm adding horse manure, compost, sand, I'm improving it, and now it's all being washed away, okay? So I think, making my point here, I've got some bad stuff that's happening from my perspective, in my opinion, right? So if you make this one change and just leave it alone, here's some good things that are happening. Number one, I'm gonna save you money. So I'm gonna put that on the good one. You don't have to pay for that farmer to disc, right? Number two, Blake estimated, I'm sure he was accurate, that it takes you about 3 days to remark all of the plots. It takes time, right? You got to measure it out, got to make sure it's all 20 by 30, somewhat close to where you did it the year before. So you take those man hours and you can do something else around you. So I think that's a good thing, right? Erosion would be eliminated or minimized dramatically, right? Because my raised beds would continue to be there. They are perpendicular to the erosion, to the natural incline. So erosion is being eliminated. My soil isn't being washed away. So I don't have to recreate my garden. So my 40 to 60 hours can be directed at something else. I consider that a good thing. right? And there's cost savings to me because I don't have to buy as much soil from Tamalings, have it delivered in their truck to create my loose soil because I want to grow things like carrots. Carrots don't like clay soil. Need that nice loose soil, right, that I'm creating. But unfortunately, it's being washed away every year. And when you turn the soil over and you rag it and you disc it, people that don't weed their plots as well as I do, there's seeds from the weeds that are in the soil get spread into my garden plot, and I have to go pull those seeds out there. I don't think that's good. That's you don't do that. I don't have to do that. So, you know, I get it. You know, you can have a difference of opinion. Some people think the idea of turning over the soil over there, but most people over there do rototill every year because the soil is heavy, heavy clay. And I had to do that this year, as I told you, because so much of my loose soil was washed away. I had to break up the soil. It was brutal. It's brutal this year. So one change. I hope that Kevin and Blake make that change because it would help me out a great deal. That's what I wanted to share with you. I like gardening over there. I'm appreciative of it. I have a small in-city lot. I could never do this. And I love taking fresh produce over to the pantry. You know, they get some of the stuff that's not so fresh from organizations. Stuff goes out there and gets taken right away. And I'm having a great time working with the scouts. Any questions? Just, you listen to Howard, good things happen. If you don't, bad things continue to happen.
Do Blake and Kevin have your information?
Absolutely. I am nothing if not thorough and emailing and letting them know, not harassing, not doing that, just letting them know my opinion, what I would prefer to happen. What do you, yes?
Thank you very much. Then
Anything else? No?
we'll continue the conversation. And
All right, great. Thank you very much. Good evening. You guys are doing a great job.
We should like to hear what Blake has to say along with Kevin together something. I don't know what. And
So we're gonna do a, and I think Blake had mentioned to Howard as well that we're gonna put out a survey at the end of the year to kind of get some feedback from the gardeners, just to kind of see that, you know, there's some key things that we're gonna put on the survey and to get that back. So, and that's one of them, just to, you know, see, you know, I mean, no matter what, we have to do something to knock all the, you know, everything down at the end of the year. But again, we'll get the survey out there just to get some feedback and see which
what we'll
direction.
do is then we'll share that with the board. We'll bring it back to the board and give you the information.
One thing I have asked to add is that what I'm suggesting is that it's not exactly like they do in the UK with allotments, where, you know, they actually allow them to build sheds and everything else. The philosophy here is that want to have everything just level for, you know, whatever aesthetic reasons, whatever reasons like that. I think you can do that if, you know, because I have to take out, I agree, like my stakes for the tomatoes, cages and whatever. But I don't think that having my raised beds would be aesthetically offensive to anybody in the area if it was just left. And if you have plots that aren't rented, you can just cut down the weeds. It should be fine. But anyways, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. So we'll look forward to that in the future now.
We'll follow up with the survey and the plan.
Do we have any other visitors?
There's no online visitors.
I have one. I would like to introduce, this is Thomas Dalton. He is our new evening manager on duty here in the rec center. Been here a month, roughly. Okay. Well, time flies. So, but I wanted to, you know, you see him at the desk, but I wanted you to, meet Tom. And so we're very happy he's here and he's doing a great job so far. So.
Welcome aboard.
Awesome.
Good to see you. I see you.
I've had a pleasure.
And he's got to go back to work now. So.
Thank you guys for having me. Nice to meet everyone.
Nice to meet you.
Have a good night. Any other visitors, Dave?
No.
We have any written correspondence there?
We do not.
We'll move along to the consent agenda.
Thank you. Tonight, we have 9 items for consideration on the consent agenda. Number 1, approval of minutes, August 15, 2024, regular and closed session minutes. Number 2, the treasurer's report. 3, investments. 4, payment of bills in the amount of $2,152,618.21. Number 5, change order number 1, Advantage Paving Solutions Incorporated, district-wide asphalt paving 2024. Number 6, payout number 1, final, Advantage Paving Solutions Incorporated, district-wide asphalt paving 2024. Number 7, change order deduct, D&J Landscape Incorporated, Constitution Park renovation 2024. Number 8, payout number 2, final, D&J Landscape Incorporated, Constitution Park renovation 2024. And number 9, payout number 1, partial to Rhino Seal Coat Incorporated, district-wide seal coating 2024.
Any questions on the agenda item?
No questions, Mr. President.
If none, can we ask for a motion?
I make a motion that the consent agenda be approved by the board as read into the record by Mr. Brown.
Second.
Second. If there's no other discussion, can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Lunt,
Aye.
Mr. Bender,
Aye.
Mr. Dahlstrom.
Aye.
Mr. Katsula.
Aye. Okay, moving on then to action items.
Our first action item on tonight's agenda is the consideration of bids, Belmont Golf Club Irrigation Improvement Project. Staff has recommended this irrigation project for the final quarter of 2025. We took this out to bid recently. We estimated $1.835 million. The lowest bid came in at $1,638,000. The bidder has completed numerous projects of similar scope, and most recently had completed, I believe, Naper Brook Golf Course not too far away. Staff is asking for approval to enter into this contract, and both Ken and Paul are available if there's any questions.
Something we've talked about and with the next step. So another.
And I'm happy to say we'll be able to use current funds for the payment of this in full. There will be no loans taken out.
The only question I had, we only had 2 bids for this project.
Yes.
Okay. Are we required, or is there a requirement to rebid if we only have 2 bids, or is it anything in our policy requiring more than 2 bids?
In our policy, we talk about having 3 quotes, but we don't talk about 3 bids.
Okay.
The state requirement for bids is an open bid process, which I believe we went through with. And even if we only had 1 bid, that would be acceptable, correct, Paul? Correct.
Okay. That was the only questions that I had.
Hey, Paul, I've got a question for you. Have we been in communication with Naper Brook Golf Course?
So I believe Ken and Jeff Posen.
Yes, John, Jeff has come through with them. He's talked to the superintendent over there. He's come through with them, the work that they've done there and everything. So yeah, he's come through with the company.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ken. Sorry, I didn't see you back there.
Oh, it's okay.
Any other questions? Ken or Paul? Not comment here, make a motion.
Make a motion that authorizing executive director to enter into a contract with Commercial Irrigation Incorporation for the installation of a new irrigation system pump house for the Belmont Golf Course for the base bid of $1,638,000 and to reject alternative bid number 8.
Second.
Move in a second. No other discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunt,
Aye.
Mr. Bender,
Aye.
Mr. Dahlstrom.
Aye.
Mr. Katsula.
Aye. Next item.
The second item on the agenda tonight is the consideration of bids Lyman Woods 3-year maintenance work for fiscal years 2025 through 2027. The board previously approved staff going out for a bid for a 3-year contract on maintenance in our natural areas, including Lyman Woods. This includes the stream bank stabilization. Our current vendor, ILM, who've been with us since the initial project, was the low bidder. They know our district well, and staff, and I know Paul, have been very happy with their work. Staff is asking for board approval to enter into this contract, and Paul is available for any questions.
Well, the only question I had with this, going back to the agreement that we have with the intergovernmental agreement. If we vote on this, then it goes to the Forest Preserve and then the village?
No, this is just us, the Park District.
We
Taking that.
pay it, but do they have to have approval or do we just send them information or?
We keep them informed of, specifically the Forest Preserve. When we have meetings with this contractor, we'll often invite them to join us to give their input. But essentially we're in charge of managing this contract.
As part of the intergovernmental, it's our cost and our management responsibility to just maintain it.
I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, are there provisions there where they can reject one of our proposals or I don't even know if it's happened. I mean, the agreement is what, 30 years old now? We're 35 years old.
I believe there's a means in there, but
I think that may be in reference to if we wanted to build something.
Okay.
Like, for example, a number of years ago, we were considering building a storage shed, and new construction, that's considered like new construction. We did need to go to the Forest Preserve to get their approval, because it had an impact on trees and part of the forest. But in this case, this just being a contractual maintenance contract, I think it's a little different.
So there's no okay. I just want to make sure that there's no chance we're paying for this and they don't come back through other requirements or other loopholes or anything else like that. Either one of the other governmental bodies.
So this will be, I want to say the third or fourth of these 3-year contracts that we've now done, and we've not had anything come back from them. Again, like I mentioned, we do allow the Forest Preserve to join us with meetings and, when we're working with this contractor, and they'll give input on if there are specific invasive species that they think we should be targeting, that this contractor, and then, we take that input from the Forest Preserve, but they've never had any issues with the contract.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Those are any other questions?
John? Not, we have a motion.
Mr. President, I make the motion that authorizing the executive director to enter into a contract with Integrated Lakes Management Incorporated, National Areas 3-year maintenance work 2025 to 2027 for a lump sum contract amount of $147,150, or I'm sorry, my screen was going $147,156.79.
Second. Second. Another discussion, a roll call.
Mr. Lunt?
Aye.
Mr. Bender?
Aye.
Mr. Dahlstrom?
Aye.
Mr. Katsula?
Aye.
Yes.
third item on tonight's agenda is the request for authorization to bid the recreation guide. In December of 2021, the board approved a 1-year contract with our current vendor that included 2 1-year renewals that give us flexibility to pivot if conditions changed in the market. This worked very well for us. So Dawn and the marketing department are looking to move forward with the same type of agreement for 2025. Tonight's action item is simply to bid it out. It's not to accept the bids. So we're looking for a motion from the board to allow us to request authorization to bid. Dawn's here for any questions.
No questions? I'm gonna make a motion.
Mr. President, I make the motion to authorize the staff to bid the 2025-2026 printing services with seasonal recreational guides for a 1-year contract with the option to renew up to 2 subsequent 1-year periods.
Second. Second. No other discussion or questions? Do I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Lunt?
Aye.
Mr. Bender?
Aye.
Dahlstrom?
Aye.
Mr. Katsula?
Aye.
The fourth item on the agenda is approval of Microsoft volume licensing. Every 3 years, the district goes out to get quotes for Microsoft volume licensing. In the past, this has been for the Microsoft Office product. This year, staff is seeking to go for the Microsoft 365 platform. That is a cost increase for the district. However, it will bring us up to industry standards and industry trends. It will allow a lot of improvements and new updates as they come available. Dell currently has the state contract for this, so they came in the lowest in selling it. And staff is looking to move forward with a motion for approval of Microsoft volume licensing. Chris is here for any questions.
No question, just to comment that I understand the cost is more, but I don't know a business that doesn't use 365, that doesn't operate without it. So I'm comfortable with the additional costs so that we can operate as efficiently as one can like before. So just to say that I think it is, I agree that it is worth it.
Thank you. And that will, I know, save Chris and IT a lot of time too with updates and such.
Yeah, there's a lot of third-party vendors that integrate with it.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're not on it, we have to do a lot of hybrid integrations. So
yeah, my business uses it. So we have what you call it, we do some of our surveys we do on there, some of our inspections we do on there.
Yeah.
Put it right in the 365 and they get a little email saying, hey, that was a finding, and it's all done through SharePoint. So it's, if you know how to use it and maximize it, it's very efficient.
Any other questions? Don't care to make a motion?
Make the motion, the board authorize the executive director to enter a 36-month agreement with Dell for the Microsoft volume software licensing for a total 36-month contract price not to exceed $101,426.88.
Second.
And second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lunt?
Aye.
Mr. Bender?
Aye.
Mr. Dahlstrom?
Aye.
Mr. Cottula?
Aye.
The fifth item up for the agenda tonight is approval of the Colo server replacement proposal. We've touched upon this slightly in recent IT reports. This was up for replacement in 2025. We believe this, combined with an online queuing software, will help alleviate some of the issues we've been facing with registration, specifically on opening day. Chris is here and I'll let him talk just briefly about the project.
So this will replace the current server that we have at Colo. We researched with Vermont Systems that owns RecTrack with their hosted solution, hosting it, maintaining it in-house. What we've discovered is that also researching virtual waiting room software, that if we bring this in-house, continue to maintain it in-house and use that virtual waiting room software that Vermont System uses, it'll alleviate a lot of the issues that patients have been facing in the past. So,
by maintaining the server ourselves and the queuing software, it allows us to maintain the safety of it at our standards. It also allows us to control some factors about it, like Chris is able to give it more power on the highest days of the server registration. In looking at the size option, it was very costly and it didn't have the same ability to do that we necessarily do have. So we will still continue to research further other softwares out in the coming years. But as a near-term fix, we believe that this should help greatly. And if it's approved tonight, the goal is to have it completed before the December registration for the upcoming winter months. Any questions?
The only question I have, this is for a server, correct?
So about that, this is for two servers. Okay. So the word server is the fact that you have two servers working together for high availability. So it's two physical servers. It's a storage array controller connected. And if one of the physical servers goes down, the other server is there to take over so that the business keeps running.
Along with the contractual services to install it and any miscellaneous expenses that come with that installation.
I believe this is going to have enough power to avoid, I mean, you can't say 100%, but avoid the difficulties we had earlier.
I'm going to go ahead and say almost 100%. Okay. Myself and staff, we met with Bend, Oregon Park District today. the queuing software that they use there, they kind of recommended them as a reference.
Okay.
They are doing the same setup that we are. They have a more powerful server on site. They're using the virtual waiting room software. They've been using it for the past 2.5 years, and they said that they're actually getting positive comments from the public saying, thank you, I'm glad you guys have this in place. And if somebody comes in to do registration in the future, what this queuing software is going to do is tell them where they're at and registration starts, and then it'll hold their place in line if there's a problem and they have to get out. When they come back, it'll keep a token, and the resident doesn't have to stand back to the back of the line and wait. So they had a lot of positive feedback with it, and it solved a lot of their issues.
What's that waiting look like? Is it like you're going to be able to complete your registration at 11:03 a.m. and so people just know to come back at 11:03 a.m.? Like I guess I don't understand how what is the user going to see with this queue?
So from my understanding, what the user will see is they'll be, if they hit the site before registration, they'll be put into a pre-registration room. It'll have our logo and our branding. And yes, to answer your question, it will have your registration starts at this time and you're this person in queue. So.
And they would presumably do that on their phone, and then that would just stay up as an open tab on their phone. They could still text and do whatever else, and then
correct
at that time go back to that tab that's open and
right. They'll either get a notification when they're ready. They'll get a chime. I was told they'll get a chime. They can get an email notification. I'm not sure. I can't remember if they get a text notification that they're ready.
So if they get on early, we can set a time. I think they gave us the example of 20 minutes before. Anybody there before 20 minutes to the registration would get randomized, spot in line. Anyone after that would get in line based on the order they come.
It'd be nice if we can get a walkthrough for the board, the demonstration. Absolutely. And that way we'll have a better understanding moving forward, what the end user sees, constituencies.
That might be the number one thing I get asked about is that registration process. I also had a question on the installation part of this, and we are choosing to go with the group that we've worked with before, but it's twice the price, and then that's a 10 grand difference here. And we feel that 10 grand is worth it to have this up and in place before our next registration process, but that is basically what we're paying an extra 10 grand for expedited service.
I mean,
this is what they charge, but we just didn't feel like outsource could do it.
So we're getting a couple of things with them. Outsourcing, if I would go with other vendors, we consistently have issues where they don't start on time, they don't complete on time, or they run into an issue. And those smaller companies, they don't have the staff on hand or the resources to go to solve that issue quickly. Sentinel's global, so they have resources to handle any type of issue that comes up right away. So
okay, I didn't see that difference in there. Sorry, it was in there. So outsource is
very sufficient to do many projects, but if there's any time restraints, we feel Sentinel, with their understanding of our system and with the resources at their disposal, is much more able to get it done in a short amount of time without a lot of additional help from Eric or Chris.
I believe that's worth 10 grand for that. Because is this service just for that setup, or is working with them on setup mean we now get to use them for other things in the future too?
It's just for setup.
It's just for setup.
So if the board decided that it wasn't a priority to have it done by the December recreation, we could move in a different direction. That would be the board's determination. The goal here has been to have it done before December at the staff level.
And is it that there's no chance outsource has it done before December, or is it just that there's less of a chance that outsource has it done?
There's a chance that they have it done, Chris.
Yeah, there's a chance they would have it done. I've given them a couple of projects in the past where they have failed to meet the deadline. So it did nothing but cost more on our end and cost more time on our end. So historically, 6 years ago, we hired another outfit to do the server replacement. We ran into the same exact situation. They came in at $9,000. Sentinel came in at about $16,000, $17,000 for this. When they started, there was a 1.5 month delay. It was a disaster. what we did is we let them go. We brought Sentinel in at their cost, and they pretty much took care of it within a few weeks. So we're very comfortable with Sentinel's work and the fact that they will get it done in line.
And IT Savvy chose not to bid on the on-site setup, or they don't offer on-site setup services?
They chose not to bid, and then CDW was going to get their resources together, and they never followed through.
Okay.
After requests. So I tried to reach out to everybody so that I was trying to get 3 bids we could look at for this. So
Chris is gonna talk to some other people in the IT groups that he frequents and find out if we can get some future vendors that we can also reach out to for quotes and bids in the future.
Okay.
Is there any co-op? I know for a while, Westford Municipal League had a co-op of IT professionals or staff that could offer these services. Is there something with the park districts that have that type of?
I'm not aware of any of this.
I'm not aware of either.
There's been rumblings from time to time, but nothing's ever materialized.
Just given the number of complaints I've heard about this on the soccer fields, I suspect most people who register with us would be willing to have us pay the extra 10 grand for the assuredness of not having to go through that before. But it's wanted to make sure we had all the information on it.
From what we've heard, each registration cycle has been more and more difficult because the number of people registering, and this has become an industry-wide problem.
At our meeting with Bend, Oregon today, they noticed that this happened just after COVID. They had an 800% increase in online, and basically that's our same story. So ever since COVID, we're running into this issue. So.
I would like to see a demonstration though, so we get better understanding. As Commissioner Bender pointed out, when people come to us or talk to us about complaints, at least we'll have some sort of background knowledge on it.
I think we have plenty of time between now and then to have Q&A just present for us.
Yeah, it's a good recommendation.
No more questions. No more questions.
I'd like to make a motion that the board authorize the director to purchase the proposed server from IT Savvy for $56,979.29. Enter into an agreement with Sentinel Technologies for professional services not to exceed $21,776 and to purchase up to $2,800 in expenses for miscellaneous project costs and contingencies. The total costs for the server and professional services are not to exceed $81,555.29.
Second.
Thank you. No other discussion? Do we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Lunt?
Aye.
Mr. Bender?
Aye.
Mr. Dahlstrom?
Aye.
Mr. Cottula?
Aye.
This final item on the action agenda is approval to amend ordinance 1324, conduct in the parks. These updates are to better define micro-mobility devices and drone use within our parks. This updates our policy based on our attorney recommendations. These were all due to recent legislation in Springfield. They're simply updating our current language and the definitions of these policies. Staff can answer any questions.
I'm ultimately asked that we take this off to vote for, or that I had asked my fellow commissioners to vote no on this. It's rather poorly drafted. It's C- work, and I just don't like the way it's drafted. And there's like some substantive problems with the way it's drafted that took me less than a minute to identify. So it does make me concerned about the quality of legal advice that we're getting. If I can spot these substantive problems in under a minute, and it would take me maybe 30 minutes to rewrite this in a good way. And on top of the substantive problems, which I'll get into, there's also just, I guess, stylistic issues that I have with the way it's being done that I'll explain as well. Just based on, somebody looked at this and thought this was good. They don't know what they're doing. And some of the other advice that we got this week from our council, I am very concerned about the quality of the council we have. And I do think that maybe it is time to see if we want, you know, just a law firm that has fresh set of eyes to help us going forward when that contract is up. And just to explain what these are, I'm so short of breath. So as I was scrolling through here, you know, I didn't know exactly where the change was going to be. I saw that at 4.3.1, we have a vehicle definition. So I think I'm going to scroll down to 4.3.1 to see the change in the vehicle definition. But I don't scroll down to there. I scroll down to 2.38. We have two different definitions of vehicle in the same ordinance, and nobody caught that. Now, if you look at the definition of vehicle in 4.3.1, it doesn't include the micromobility devices, and it doesn't include any of the other changes that were made here. Now, the law of statutory construction says that if there is a more specific definition in the section that you're actually, you know, using the word in, you use that definition. So anybody reading this the right way would use that definition of 4.3.1 to interpret any of the ordinances in Article 4. This Article 2 definition is meaningless. Now, I'm sure our attorneys can argue, well, we'll argue that, you know, this was the more up-to-date, this is obviously one we intended to use, but that's really poor work to not see that we defined the same word twice, and that took me 5 seconds to see. All right, next, I did read, you know, 2.3.8 and the changes made here. And we define vehicle, we define micromobility device, we go into all sorts of things there. And then we write this sentence: transport devices in the service of the district are exempt from regulations set forth herein. What is a transportation device? Do they mean the vehicles that we use are exempt herein? Because the word vehicle means vehicle. I don't know what transport device means. Another law of statutory construction says that if you use two different terms in writing an ordinance or a statute or a regulation, those two different terms must have two different meanings. So they put the word transportation devices right after the word vehicle and didn't even catch the fact that they're using two different terms for what is presumably the same thing, but I don't know if it's the same thing because it's a different word. So I have to assume when I'm reading this that it does mean something else, which is just never defined anywhere. Now, when I went down to 4.3.1 and saw the definition of vehicle, right under that, we have this extensive definition of otherwise motor vehicle. I don't want to go down there right now, but it basically describes what a person with a mobility disability can use on our parks. Yet the definition of vehicle in 2.38 was amended to include the sentence, the regulations set forth herein for vehicles shall not apply where necessary to make a reasonable accommodation for use of the park system under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we get this generic regulation in here, where necessary, make reasonable combinations. But we actually already have a very specific ordinance on this. We don't need this sentence at all. And now we've just created two ways of regulating the same thing. So I don't know which one applies. This all took me less than a minute to see when reading this. And if somebody was reading it, which I have to think they didn't, they would have seen that. What I do think's happened, these changes to law happened, and they were like, what is the quickest way we can write a change in ordinance for all of our park districts? Well, they all define vehicle. So if we just build this all into the definition of vehicle, I don't actually have to read the part of the ordinance that covers vehicles. I can just bury it in there. So it does seem to me that that is just phoning it in, and I didn't like to see that. But also, I mean, stylistically, as a person who has to read local ordinances for a living, I hate to see poorly constructed ordinances, right? So one of the things they do here, within the definition of vehicle, they put in the definition of micro-mobility devices. Okay, they have a definition inside of a definition that should have its own standalone definition. Yes, I know that means you have to renumber it and then add the numbers, and I got to do a little more work. But again, I could have rewritten this thing well in under 30 minutes, and I hope they could too. Stylistically, what I also do not care for is when we get into this definition of micromobility devices, they kind of sneak in here, class 1 and 2 only, class 3 are banned. Devices do not include low-speed e-scooters, which are prohibited from the park system. All right, so this is a style thing. It's not really, you know, that damaging, but it's bad style. substantive changes should be in the Article 4 section, or substantive lawmaking, right? Definitions are 4 definitions. Yet they are making a substantive change by explicitly prohibiting e-scooters in the park system in the definition section. Again, because it's easier for them to just write one change of definition and give that to all the park districts they work for, rather than actually give us a new section in our Article 4, where we do list what vehicles are allowed and not allowed, and that is where they belong. So just such bad work. I can't stand it that they gave this to us and thought this was okay. In the stylistic things, I may not have even picked out if the substantive things weren't such a big problem. All right. The other thing I'm curious about and really the change in law, for those who didn't read Senate Bill 1690, is just for the first time we can regulate whether e-scooters are allowed or not. The change in state law kind of said, you know, e-scooters are allowed unless the park district says no, and that's why we do have to do this. So there is a reason that we do have to do this if we don't want e-scooters all over our park. There's just a good way to do it and a C- way to do it here. But the other thing, so I could not find the change in law that required the drone policy change. I mean, maybe it was in 1690 and I just got too keyed in on the e-scooter thing. Maybe I could have looked a little farther. But I noticed this language here: to the extent this policy conflicts with regulations promulgated by the Illinois Department of Transportation, those regulations shall supersede. I mean, in any circumstance, I mean, the state can tell us what laws we can and cannot have. Our power is derived from state statute that is set by state lawmakers. So I'm really curious as to why somebody felt that was needed. Is there something different about this statute that gives Department of Transportation authority to override us? And I guess, is it just that the agency itself can override us? It doesn't actually take a statute to override us? I would be really interested in reading the statute so that I know whether that is required or not, which, is another point I wanted to make, Eric. And this has never been asked, so it's not like you would have known to do this. But in these, when a law firm tells us that an update is needed due to legislative changes, I would like to at least get the bill numbers in the summary so that I know how to find it, because I could not find a bill with the word drone in it when I searched the General Assembly's website. So I don't know if a different type of word was used. I don't know where this 100 foot comes from. What search terms should I have been looking for? And, since I have ability to read regulations and know what they require us to do or don't do, I would love the ability to be able to assess for myself, not just, trust lawyers, particularly these ones that I'm really losing confidence in. I would like the ability to know that for myself. So next time we're told that legislation is needed, or change in ordinance is needed, because I would like to have that legislation.
Absolutely.
But for like those substantive reasons, the stylistic reasons, okay, we can barter over. But those substantive reasons, 2 definitions of the same word, using 2 words for the same thing, and creating 2 different ordinances, or covering mobility devices for people with mobility disabilities, I think that makes this worthy of a no vote from the commission, or peeling this back until we get at least B plus maybe work, because this is barely passable.
Yeah, definitely. What we can do is we can bring this back to Dirk and Ansel Glink and have them rewrite it in a more substantive way. I think what might have happened here is, as you said, they were looking just at the individual inserts to insert into the policy and not the policy cumulatively to determine what to add.
And that's where I think we could benefit from maybe some fresh eyes when we have a chance to relook at that contract, because maybe somebody who didn't work with the park district for as many years as Ansel Glink has, who didn't maybe write this initially, maybe they would be more into checking whether that work was done well the first time or not. And maybe they would catch a few more of these things, which again, a minute. It didn't take me long at all to see the flaws I listed there. So it's just the kind of service I would hope to get from a law firm or bank.
So I'll table this.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Bender on all the points that you articulated. I was confused as well when I was reading this ordinance. And I also had an issue with if we're to give this to a Downers Grove police officer for enforcement, I think they'd have to be hard pressed to find out where to find the violation or write it on a citation. Because it's under the definition where it's banned as opposed to being a ban. You'd have to go to the definition to find the elements, what they're citing for. And yeah, I agree with Commissioner Bender. Why don't we table this, or that would be it has to be an emotion.
Yes.
So, Mr. President, I make the move that board table, what do we call it? Park District Ordinance 1324, and for further consideration, until further consideration.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Not, second, we have a roll call.
Mr. Lunt,
Aye.
Mr. Bender,
Aye.
Mr. Dahlstrom,
Aye.
Mr. Katsula.
Aye. Well, thank you. Okay, next item, president comments. I just wanted to comment that fall seems to be off to a good start with numbers, looking at all the reports that have been submitted. We had some nice events so far and seen a lot of activity from the park, so thank you all for everything you're doing.
Pickleball was a smashing success. I like the pickles they were giving out. Josh, God bless his heart, he was ramping things up because the Bears had already kicked off, but we didn't have a second session, I guess. So he was supposed to go in the afternoon, but he did a good job. So hats off to Josh. It was nice to go over there. Good participation. I don't know if this is new business or not, but I would like to get some feedback or some comments about whether or not we want to bring back the planning session. Or should we talk about that on the new business? Either one. Or entertain. The only thing is that I think lately, for me anyway, is that I think maybe we're missing some stuff, and that we might consider doing another planning session. I don't know if we have to take a motion on it or wait for the next meeting, but I don't know how other commissioners feel about it. But I think that a planning session, maybe, I'm just tossing out there, from 6 to 7 and then go into our regular meeting. I just think there's some things that we could or need to be discussed in an open forum. And then, for example, the village does a great job with their planning sessions. Then usually when the meeting comes, it's, the voting is more smooth. That's just a recommendation. I don't know how John or the rest of the board feels, or and the other thing that I like to bring up in next year's budget, I'd like to see some sort of, and this is getting back to Commissioner Bender's point with the ordinance book, is possibly finding resources to codify our ordinances. I think it's overdue, and it would be helpful for the general public if we can have that for next year's budget as a project. So,
yep. Hey, just a second. Commissioner Lunt said, I don't know how much that it costs to get your ordinances onto. I think it's just American Legal Publishing. I think it's one of them. And then Minico might be the other one. It makes them very easy to search and look for. For a nerd about this stuff like me, it makes it easier. The other thing that the commissioner comments points maybe not the point. I don't think it's right to act on it now, but just to bring up the conversation about bringing back the planning meetings. I think it gives us an opportunity to talk about what sorts of things we as commissioners want to see on the agenda or not want to see, or the form of it before it gets on there. Just an example, later tonight, we're going to talk about what, we're going to support for legislative priorities. And we kind of just get this as an up or down vote with 4 or 5 days to go before the meeting. But it seems like that's the kind of thing that maybe we could have talked about it last week. Let the commissioners know that we had this opportunity so that we could have maybe taken a little more time to think about what priorities we would have had, or to, opine on the ones that were going to get put onto the agenda. Because I am going to, when we get there, propose one of those. And there, we had some other stuff on the agenda today that was ultimately removed. And I just think that going back to having a planning session where we are talking about things where we know we're not going to vote about them, but it gives us a chance to, you know, to communicate about them and get the agenda in a healthy shape before we even, you know, get to the meeting the next month. So I would invite our other commissioners to consider if that's something they'd be interested in.
I'd be certainly be in favor of and supporting of. And again, my own personal take to the rest of the commissioners is that I just think that, again, we're missing some things in translation that should be discussed or have the opportunity to discuss. And then, you know, I support Commissioner Bender's 100% with his reasons why. But I think something we discuss.
So this discussion comes up at the perfect time. AD is going to be working with us to put up some calendar ideas for next year's meetings.
Okay.
So as we talk about that on the upcoming, is it the second meeting in October we have that on?
It should probably gonna be either the workshop of this October or November.
So at one of the 2 October meetings, that will be a topic. So I think that would be the best time to have that discussion amongst the board. And Bill will be back too, and we can talk about how to handle these planning sessions.
Yeah, we do have 2 upcoming workshop meetings in October and November. Historically, we do not have one scheduled during the month of December. And I think we as the board took a decision for 2024 to reduce the amount of workshop meetings over the summer months. But I'm certainly in agreement that workshop meetings are advantageous for our efforts.
Okay. I will let Bill know, and that will be a topic coming up on one of the future board meetings.
Very good. Any other commissioner comments? Move on to staff and committee reports.
With tonight's budget and capital reports, we were planning on foregoing board reports tonight, and I'll just ask if there's any questions, but really quick, I did want to update the board on 2 items. The first was we did have a room rental waiver request that was atypical. I spoke with the board members individually on how to handle this, as it was outside of what we typically define within our policy, which is typically Downers Grove local governments like schools, along with local Downers Grove partners such as Historical Society and such. I think one of the things we should do is bring that policy back to the board in the coming months and workshop it a little bit to improve the language and make sure it's in line with what the board wants moving forward. I think that would be a good opportunity for us to talk about that. I just did want to talk about that, and we did end up not waiving that request. And I believe that the group is going to pay for the rental instead. The second item is I just want to give the board a quick update that the IAPD Legal Symposium is coming up on Thursday, November 7th at 8 a.m. It's at the Hyatt Lodge in Oak Brook. If anyone is interested, any of the commissioners interested, please just let Adine or I know tonight or at your leisure if you'd like to attend. With that, you have your board, all the departmental board reports in front of you. Are there any questions?
Quick question, and this is probably getting back to that fee rental. Would it be better, and it's a question for the commissioners too, would it be better to have that as a policy or have it as an ordinance with the fee scheduling?
I would support it being a policy. I don't think it needs to be an ordinance, it just needs to be a bright line policy. You know, the problem with policies without bright lines is, you know, people sometimes like them because it gives them the flexibility to be like, yeah, this makes sense. But every time you're letting somebody make a decision, you're letting somebody make a bad decision, right? And I'm not saying that this one was, but when you open the door, you open it wide open, you don't open it a crack. But yeah, if there's just a general policy and we stick to the policy that says here are the groups that get free rooms and here are the groups that don't, I don't think that needs to rise to the level of order.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any questions about the reports tonight?
I have no questions.
So move on to unfinished business.
There's none at this time.
New business.
New business. Tonight we have our capital, our fitness, and our golf presentations for the budget. This includes fee discussion and the revenues and expenses related to both fitness and golf, along with capital suggestions for 2025 and our 5-year plan. Tonight, Trish is gonna make her first presentation of the budget cycle, starting with fitness and then going into golf, followed by Paul talking about our suggestions for the capital for 25 and 26. So Trish, if you want to go ahead into fitness.
Good evening. Before I get started, diving into the 4,500 fitness report, I did just want to say thanks to Dave and Michelle Pusateri and Marie Kloss for their efforts into this fitness report. Marie is our fitness supervisor who ultimately worked very closely with Michelle to develop the budget behind the scenes. And then in addition, I would like to thank Ken McCormick and Jeff Posen for their efforts and contributions to the golf budget. So that being said, something that we did put on, as you'll see, we do have page numbers or slide numbers, if you will. So if there's any slides that you need me to go back to, the page number is there for you to reference and we can find it a lot easier. For fitness, I'll be honest, there's not a whole lot for 2025. Staff is not proposing any fee adjustments for 2025. So we're really just looking to ensure that you guys are in agreement with how the numbers are looking, the look, the feel, and the information that's provided. You will notice that we are continuing to budget for member growth. However, it's at a much slower pace. We did peak in member growth in 2023 and 2024, and we are starting to see that membership growth is starting to level off at a smaller percentage. We still are faced with strong wage pressures. However, inflation is starting to slow for 2025 and 2026. This is just a brief timeline showing you, just laying out the whole budget process. We started July 1st. We kicked it off to staff. Staff works through mid-August. Directors review August and September. We're now at the point where we're presenting. Tonight is fitness and golf. October 3rd workshop will be the total budget document. There will be the series of approval of ordinances for public viewing. If we need to have any special tax levy hearings in November, that would take place. And then if all goes well, it would be officially approved at the board meeting in December, and the ordinances would be filed with the county clerk. So moving into the specific fitness budget, this is broken up. We're going to look at 2024 projections. We will also talk 2025 budget as well as 2026 estimate. Please know that the 2026 estimate is really there just as a planning tool for future reference. It is not a formal budget by any means for 2026. The only budget items that would eventually be approved through the approval process relates to 2025. For 2024, we are seeing, unfortunately, that we are falling $46,000 below budget when it comes to the charges for service category. And really what that is accounting for is, one, we were a little aggressive in our budgeting last year. We did not expect the memberships to slow in growth like we're starting to see. And also the change of memberships from a standard membership to an insurance membership. Obviously that changes the revenue. You will see that the salaries and benefits from personnel has increased. And we will talk about that further. There are specific reasons and I will point those out later. But we are really excited to show that across the board for 24, 25, and 26, that fitness is still able to cover its direct and indirect expenses from the revenues that it's generating. For 2025, specifically, I mentioned earlier, staff is currently not recommending any changes to the fee structure. Obviously, if the board feels differently, they can bring that up as a discussion point. You will also notice that operating expenses are growing faster than the revenues in 2025. And this is mainly related to personnel and the increased customer service that we're providing for the fitness members. As mentioned, 2026 is not a formal budget. It's simply used as an estimate to help us forecast future needs and projects. Looking at the financial summary, there's a lot of numbers up here. But what I really want to point out is if you look at that first yellow with the net revenues, you will see that we consistently started to grow from 2020 through the 2026 estimated column. And that brings us ultimately very close to where we were pre-pandemic, which is great and what we really wanted to see. We are also showing that expenditures also grew over that time in correlation with those revenues, and that's okay. It is sitting below the 2019 pre-pandemic numbers, which is actually very great. As I mentioned, if you look at the net fitness line, which is the low bluish line, you will see for 2024 projection, the $130,000 mark, the 2025 budget number of $97,000, and the 2026 of $154,000. This is showing the profitability of 4,500 Fitness and the ability that it has to cover both its direct expenses and the facility expenses that are allocated. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in more detail. This slide is representative of annual revenues versus the average monthly members. Some of you may know or have heard that during the pandemic, we were always talking about this V shape that we would see in these graphs. Obviously, with the pandemic, we were dipping to our lows, and now we wanted to see it rebound. We are seeing that pattern here with both revenues and members. We are budgeting 2025 and 2026 each to have a 4% membership increase. So that's that orange line, but you can see that it's not as steeply increasing as it has from year to year, from 21 to 22 to 23. You can see it leveling off. For fitness operating revenues, it's important to note that there's no tax money that gets specifically allotted to fitness. The tax revenues are used for the overall upkeep and maintenance of the recreation center itself. For non-tax revenues, that's mainly our memberships that we have. For 2024, 90% of the revenues generated in 2019 relate to the membership growth that we've had over the years. In 2025, we anticipate that going up to 92% of the 2019 revenue. I mentioned that the insurance memberships continue to grow. They have almost doubled since 2019. And that is also making it a little bit difficult to hit the same revenue numbers as before because insurance memberships do not provide as much of the financial benefit to the district. Other fitness revenues, group exercise is rebounding. It's at 85% of the 2019 levels, and we're budgeting that to come in at 90%. We plan to do this with additional offerings, different classes, changing our group X schedule. Personal training remains above the 2019 levels for all years, 24, 25, and 26. And the walking track memberships remain very popular. And at the end of June, we were at 1,400 track memberships. This is a chart that shows the current trends of memberships from 2019 through the estimated 2026. You will see in the orange is the insurance memberships, and you will see how in 2019 that was at 5%, and it's now showing at 9%, which is almost doubling. And this graph also will show that the standard memberships were at 74 and they have dropped down to 71%. This is another look at memberships. This does not include track memberships. We wanted to keep the comparisons very fair to 2019. So what this graph shows is in 2024, January, we were at about 80% of our 2019 memberships. By mid-year, we were at 90%. And the average amongst between January and June, we were averaging 88%. Through continued marketing efforts, exceptional customer service, and our quality within the fitness center that we offer, we are budgeting for 4% growth, like I had mentioned, in both 2025 and 2026. Just wanted to point out the fee structure. I mentioned we have no changes to fees or no recommendations for fee changes for 2025 or 2026. Rates were adjusted for the first time in 2024 since 2019, and that was simply to help us keep up with the inflationary expenses. Our fees do still remain very similar to our comparables. Moving on to operating expenses, I had mentioned earlier the upward pressures of salaries and wages, and that is the first line on this chart. If you look all the way over to the 2024 versus budget column, you'll see that there's a $37,000 difference and it increased 19.1%. Why did it increase? Because our membership growth increased so significantly in 2023 and the beginning of 2024, staff decided that we would reallocate employees. So a full-time employee who was working for the recreation center now became specific to fitness and memberships and handles all things membership related for our fitness members. So therefore his salary was moved under the fitness budget. So his salary was budgeted in totality. However, we just moved what department, which then shows that this increased drastically. We also had one of our fitness members get married over the summer, and the health insurance changed from single coverage to single plus spouse, obviously causing a larger expense on our end. And so that is the difference in the employee benefits line item. So when you look at moving to the 2025 changes for salaries and wages, and then the second line, employee and benefits, you'll see that those start to come down a little bit. And that's because now we have a full year of those two changes. And when you get to 2026, now you can see that we're just where we want to be, less than 3% and at the 5% for insurance changes. For professionals and consultants, we started doing continued preventative maintenance twice a year, which bumps up the cost. That is very beneficial though, because it helps mitigate major repairs that needs to happen to any equipment that may not be under warranty. In addition, our instructional services in this area is increasing due to different classes that are being offered, such as Tai Chi. In conjunction with the preventative maintenance, you will see under the 2024 projection for maintenance and repairs, $7,000, and we only had budgeted $2,500. This is a direct result of the preventative maintenance. This is the third-party vendor comes in, does their preventative maintenance, and might find something that needs to be fixed. We're able to fix it at a lesser cost because we're catching it sooner, therefore keeping our equipment quality better and obviously ultimately safer for our patrons that use it. Under the improvements area, that's where we have our 5 cardio leases. Each lease is 5 years long. That's also where we have our strength equipment. 2025 is the 3rd year of the 5-year lease to own for the strength equipment. 2025 is also increasing about $6,000, and that's related to 2 TV screens that are going to be added to the True Stairmaster and the recumbent bike that we just recently received. 2026 in that row you'll see is dropping down to $70,000, and that's because we make a payment on one of our cardio leases in 2025, but we keep the equipment through 2026. hoping that our next lease payment for the new cycle would then be January of 2027. So that explains that dip. Moving on to how we allocate the rec center facility expenses. Keep in mind, this is just an allocation that we do internally. You will not see this number reported on any special report. We can't run it out of our financial software system in a nice, easy way. So as you know, most of the rec center expenses, we can't code to the fitness center directly because it's used for so many other program areas. So we allocate these based on revenue. And it's typically between 50 and 60% of the facility expenses get recorded to the fitness center. With the exception of 2020 and 2021, you'll see a spike there because a lot of the other program areas weren't operating or running due to COVID, but we found a way to have fitness up and running. So that allocation is a little bit skewed, but it's 50 to 60% typically. And this is also where you see the net fitness line items again, that starting in 2023, we were able to begin to recover and fully function in a profitable manner for 4,500 Fitness in 23. And we continue that through 24, 25, and 26. And with that, are there any questions from the board for me, or Dave is also here if there's any other specific fitness operation questions?
Happy to see that the fees are gonna. Good job. I mean, that's one of the things that we get a lot of feedback from our constituents is the fees. And this is really good news. Thank you.
So if there's no other questions on fitness, I can just move right into golf. Okay. All right, moving on to golf. We have the same format as the fitness presentation, maybe a few more slides. So some things to think about as we move through this golf discussion is, one, are we in general concurrence with how the golf budget looks overall? There is a proposed $1 fee increase for greens fees that you will see throughout the presentation that we can also talk about. And then also Ken will chime in later on to discuss the capital items. You will see that for 2025, well, for 2024, we know and we have seen that we've had strong demand for the course. For 2025, we are taking a conservative approach for, one, the weather adjustment, and two, the irrigation system replacement. As I mentioned, you'll see the theme of the recommended fee adjustment for greens fees. And then we also have the continued wage pressure, but you'll also see that inflation slows. For 2024, I don't think it's much of a surprise to any of us here that obviously we've had a lot of great demand this year. Revenues grew significantly for the first 6 months of the year, and we are projecting for those to remain at those high amounts. This is mainly due to the early opening and demand that took place in February, March, and April. And ultimately what we're seeing is if there's availability, golfers are coming out to the course. For 2025, again, there's the $1 per round fee adjustment. And you will also see that operating expenses are growing faster than revenue. But this is also related to our conservative approach for revenues and that we don't want to over budget in the event we have severe weather days. The financial summary has way more numbers on here than the fitness does. But again, looking at that total golf operating revenues line item highlighted in yellow towards the top third of the page. It's important to note that from 2020 to 2026, our revenues have gone up about $700,000. Our total golf operating expenses have also grown about $700,000. But one thing I want to point out, when you look at the 2024 budget and the 2024 projection for operating expenses, is even though our revenue is coming in significantly higher, we're still able to manage our expenses, and our expenses are only projected to come in $7,000 higher at this point. So because staff works very hard to keep those expenses down and be so fiscally responsible with that, we're able to then build our fund balance to then fund capital projects that we need at the golf course, such as this irrigation system, without having to take out a loan. What this graph shows is the mauve colored bar is the total rounds of golf. The blue color is the total buckets of balls. We put that in like a bucket being 30 balls in a bucket. And then the green dotted line is the total revenue. As you can see, our projection for rounds is going up about 3%. We're hopeful that we're going to hit that 46,000 round mark. You can also see in 2025 and 2026 that those rounds are coming back down, and those rounds are budgeted to come back down due to the weather adjustment and also due to the irrigation project that will be starting in the fall of 2025. The bucket of balls, we are projecting almost a 7% increase. And again, nobody wants to sit out in the range in the blistering cold or the storming weather. So we built in a weather adjustment for the 2025 budget. Those two factors flow into the revenue stream. And so you'll see that we are projecting record revenues for 2024 at 2.2 million, but those are lowered back down to 2.126 for 2025. I think one of the favorite indicators that we all like to see is this total revenues per round, because this really brings in the true experience for a golfer. So we were lucky that we've had continued strong performance, the early opening of the course, and quality weather. They all contributed to this. From 2020 to 2024, this dollar amount has grown 36%. And from 2020 to what we estimate it to be in 2026, it would have grown 44%. So this is a great indicator that people are coming, they're experiencing the course, they're experiencing the amenities that the course offers, staying at the clubhouse socially, purchasing merchandise, equipment that they might need. So that's a really good number to see.
One thing we find with this one is that the courses that are really out there being successful have a high number in this area. It just shows that they're doing a lot of different things to try to spread out, that revenues aren't just coming from one area, they're coming from many. And Ken, staff, the board have made a lot of decisions in recent years that have helped allow that, whether it is adding the pergola at the clubhouse, adding the cover to the range. All of these things have helped us expand the offerings out there.
So, well, just for a moment, if I may. So you just take the daily revenue for the day and divide by the number of golfers, or
what this is the total revenue divided by the rounds
for the day?
For the season.
Oh,
for the season.
Okay.
Yes.
So if someone's coming that's using the range and they're not golfing, that's still being
factored in.
Percentage of the round that was played on.
It's all an average.
As you know, we like to talk about weather and its impacts on golf. So here at the Downers Grove District, we describe an ideal golf day to be anywhere between 50 and 90 degrees. with less than 1/10 of an inch of rain on any given day. So the ideal days through June of 2024, June 30th, was 71 days. And the average between 2020 and 2024 was sitting at 71 days. So we're right on target. But what this chart sees is for 2024, which is the blue bar on the chart, you will see February spiked up related to the early opening. March kind of held its own. And then you see April also jumping up above the prior years with the exception of 1 year for ideal days. And then it tapers down in May and June. So really the bulk of our extra revenue we feel came in between February, March, and April. And we've just maintained that same pace. For membership rates, as I mentioned, we are looking to add $1 for each green fees listed, and the blue box at the top is the actual greens fees. The green box is our passes, and we are looking to increase the 2 pass offerings by 10%. The orange box is our cart rentals. We are not proposing any changes to carts. And for the range, which is the gold box at the bottom, we are not proposing any changes to the range at all. Now, I do know that there was an additional memo added to board pack that came from Eric, Dave, and Ken that has detailed explanation regarding this $1 increase. He also has another graph that's in there. So I would like to, if there's questions regarding rates, to circle back on that at the end of the presentation. So this chart just shows our average weekly rate, our average weekend rate, senior, junior rate, and non-resident rate. It was just a quick snapshot to show you where we're currently at, which is the white thicker line in comparison to our comparables. The black line would be the increased rates in comparison to our comparables. But please keep in mind that the increase, we're showing our increase, but we do not know at this time what other golf courses are proposing to do on their end. So we are still seeing that we are within the mid-range and of our comparables. Range revenues, we are on track for record revenues. We are projecting $475,000 of revenue at that driving range. As I mentioned, we are not recommending any fee adjustments out there. And as previously mentioned, the 2025 dips due to accounting for a weather adjustment. Golf programming, this relates to adult lessons and leagues, youth lessons and leagues, golf camps, or special events. You will see for the 2024 projection, we are more in line with the actuals of 2022 and 2023. 2021 was still the COVID effects. There was still other programs that weren't operating yet or slow to come back. And so golf was still outperforming those areas. 2025, we are showing an increase. The district plans to hire a third golf pro. And with the addition of that golf pro, we will be able to expand lesson offerings or other programming offerings. Merchandise and concession revenues. We have strong concessions for 2024. People are enjoying our clubhouse improvements, as we mentioned, and just a higher demand of foot traffic through the golf course. We are noticing for merchandise that while it's still doing great, it is slowing. And we feel like that is due to the Belmont course name change and that it's wearing off, basically. Like the newity of the name change is just starting to wear off and people aren't needing as much gear as they once wanted. We are still continuing to offer quality and fun options out there. We still have different equipment options that people can buy So that explains why in 24, 5, and 6, it's leveling off to that 85,000 mark after it peaked in 2023. We did buy a new fryer out at the golf course, and staff will be working to expand its concession menu with different food options for 25 and into 26. Moving on to expenses and personnel, we have 3 full-time positions that are out there, Ken being one, and then Jeff Posen, who's the superintendent, and Brian Kalal, who is the assistant superintendent of maintenance out there. The recent years from 2020 through 2024, you will see the increase is pretty gradual, and that's really just due to the need for more staff out there due to demand, the pressure of the minimum wage increase. For 2025, the main thing we did is we took a step back and we reevaluated the support staff. So marketing, finance, HR, the executive team, and we took a step back, and up until this point, 5% of our salaries were being contributed to golf. We made the allocation change for 2025 from 5% to 10%, just because more work is needed for golf because the business is growing so quickly and is at an elevated amount. So that's really what's causing that big increase between the 2024 projection of the 668,000 to the 795. Plus we have our standard raise pool built in, plus we have our health insurance benefits increase that's built in. Moving on to utilities, there's really no surprises here. Nothing's jumping out other than we haven't gotten much rain lately, so it could skew these projections that are up here now. But other than that, we are just really basing 2025 on known increased rates for water that we know that the village is going to put into place, along with increase in usage for the other utilities. For maintenance, repairs, and replacements, you will notice that the 2024 projection is up to almost $144,000. Included in this number is the audio system that we just recently put in at the clubhouse. It's dipping in 2025. Staff feels that with the irrigation system being replaced, there will be a less need for repairs for the irrigation system. And it basically covers just updates to small assets throughout the course that need to be maintained, fixed, replaced, just to keep the quality of the course up at our high standard. Moving into capital, for 2024, we budgeted $310,000. We are projecting it to finish at $278,180. These are the list of projects, and I will turn it over to Ken to highlight what has been done for 2024 or will be done, and then we will move into the 2025 capital.
Sure. So on the list right now, the fire panel has already been completed. The clubhouse door replacement was just completed this week. They're beautiful, so if you get a chance to come out and take a look at them. We're getting a lot of positive comments on that. The bunker improvements, that is to be completed right now. We are working on the bunker on hole number 5. That is right in the playing path of the golfers. So we're trying to delay that as long as possible. So that's kind of push that as far into the fall as possible. So when we start to get some inclement weather, it's not as affecting as many golfers. And then the irrigation system replacement, obviously we've gone through all that process. And then the vehicle, the equipment, the new utility vehicles, and the skid steer that was purchased in the spring. So that has been completed.
For 2025, the capital is budgeted at $1.9 million. So Ken, if you would like to speak to those.
Yeah, so the major, obviously the major capital improvement next year is the irrigation system. So with that, we want to continue. We wanted to keep on adding a couple things. we have this bunker improvement project that has a couple more years, so we get all the bunkers taken care of. I believe on the 5-year capital plan, it has a year or two beyond this year to finish that out. And then only one other vehicle to be replaced would be a new dump truck for Jeff to work on different projects that are going on the golf course. So minimal other projects other than the irrigation system that's going to take place next year.
No, we kept that irrigation at the higher amount that we were originally budgeting. That is for some contingencies and such, because as they start digging and start removing stuff, we don't know what could be found or what could be needed. So that money is just there for extra if needed. If not, it'll go back to fund balance.
Drinking fountains are part of the.
That was not included. The alternate came in very high.
Right.
So what we plan on doing is reviewing that and looking if there's another way to get that project done at a lower cost. And these funds would be available for that also.
Just out of curiosity, we're gonna purchase one dump truck just for. Well, it's
yeah. So currently there is a Silverado that's used for whether it be to go get parts or use the golf course for different equipment. This is a combination that will be a replacement of that, so they'll be using it to service themselves outside of the golf course, whether they pick things up, but also in terms of capital projects that are on the course.
Can we use it in the winter as a plow at all? I mean, can we get more use of it than just putting it at the golf course and rotating it in the fleet at all? And, you know, assigning it in the summer, obviously, to golf, but I'd hate to have a vehicle just sit there, a brand new dump truck all winter long.
Yeah, I mean, it could be upfitted with a plow on it as well. I think this is just the actual dump truck. Is that correct, Ken?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, but you could upfit a dump truck with a plow as well.
You see where I mean, I just would hate to spend the money. What are we looking at? 100,000 or something for a new dump truck now?
85,000 for the truck. How much would it be to outfit it? Another 10, 15?
Yeah, probably about 15 grand.
What we can do is have Kevin and Jeff and Ken talk about it and see how we can make something more happen.
I'm not opposed to it, Ken. I'm just saying that I'd like to see some more use of it.
And Craig, just, you know, we actually had that discussion. Kevin and I did, is there a possibility we could share the truck between the two departments? But once we get rolling, they need it. And of course, he needs it,
Sure,
but in the off season, right, that makes more sense. So.
Are there any more questions on capital? So at this point, I am happy to take any questions regarding the golf budget. If we need to have further discussion about the fee structure that's being proposed for the $1 per round fee increase and the 10% increase for passes, or if there's any other capital questions.
The only question that I had or concerns that I have is the increase for the in-district residents dollar. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just not 100% sold on it right now, just from my perspective. I don't mind if we do have a $1 increase for out of district. I don't know. I'd like to see what impact that would have on the budget if we decide to just do the out of district with an increase. I don't mind being one of the lowest fees around. I think that's a good thing for our residents and our taxpayers. But I'm going into this budget year, hopefully my philosophy is I'd like to see 0 increases in fees. In fact, maybe some reductions too. So again, not opposed to it right now. But I'd like to see if we can, what that would look like if we just did out of district as opposed to just across the board.
And we're probably talking about, so if we have 46 rounds, would you say about half are out of district? So that would be about $20,000 to $25,000.
Okay.
And we did take a conservative look of not increasing the other fees. You know, we've done in the past increasing driving range and carts and everything along the boards, and then minimizing the fee increase to just green fees. And obviously, we're trying to offset some of the expenses. So there, we did look to limit the fee increase as much as possible.
And the other question I have goes back to the kitchen. Have we thought, or is it a consideration to lease that out as opposed to staffing it ourselves?
I do.
Or is even if feasible?
Well, the issue that you come with that, from my experience, is that most of the time when you lease that out, they want to take over the liquor license as well.
Okay.
So that's a tough negotiating because they want to come in, they want to take away, that's your revenue generating source. So that would be a tough negotiating. And currently our restaurant is not set up for a full commercial restaurant.
Okay.
Because there would be significant capital improvements in terms of venting and things along those lines that would need to be done to lease it out.
Okay. I was just asking for a revenue stream.
Right.
So my question,
Hey, Ken, regarding the fee structure.
Yep.
Usually, golfers will vent about a price or gripe about a price at point of sale or checkout, when they're checking in for their tee time. Has staff shared any comments with you, anecdotal comments from the golfers on our current fee structure?
We get very few, if no, comments about being priced too high or a negative. We might get an initial golfer who comes in for the first time who's not played our 9-hole course. It might give me the initial comment that it's high for a 9-hole course, and they always make an effort to come back in afterwards and tell us that it was worth the money. So we hear very few, if any, negative comments in terms of our price structure. And one of the things that we do when we do that comparison you guys saw on the list there was that where we fall in a line doesn't tell the whole story. Basically, a lot of our comparables with our 9-hole fee have restrictions in terms of carts are required at a certain time, or you can't play 9 holes until a certain time. We have none of those restrictions. So we do allow people to walk, and we allow, obviously, we're a 9-hole course, but we provide a 9-hole option to all these golfers at a time that's not available at these other courses that we try to compare ourselves to.
Thanks. Are we still considering dynamic pricing for 25?
With this time, we've decided to hold off on dynamic pricing. We'll bring that back to the board in the future as a future discussion.
Okay. I'm comfortable with the fee structure. I think we're underpriced. I think labor wages are going to continue to increase. We've got a pretty aggressive capital plan in 25. There's a ton of value that's derived from our golf course. I'd like to keep it profitable. I agree that I personally believe we're underpriced. I visit a lot of golf courses locally and nationally. And for the value that we provide with all of the golf amenities currently, it's a steal in my opinion. I will make one other comment regarding the capital recommendations for 25. I'm uncomfortable with them, and it does not currently include a improvement to the short game area, which sits directly behind the private range area where we give lessons. That area is inferior or subpar, to use a golf term, in my opinion. And if you look at everything we're offering at the golf course, fantastic 9 holes, redesigned clubhouse, great green to practice on, certainly one of the best ranges around. The only thing that's currently missing is a short game area. And what's currently happening is golfers are dissatisfied with that short game area. They're overflowing to the putting green, which is not really ideal because that putting green gets very full with people chipping, which creates a safety concern, in my opinion. Number 2, I've received feedback the last couple of years, and I've been voicing this for a little while now, from our schools, our high schools that both practice at Downers Grove at the golf course. Excuse me. And they have lamented about the short game area. There's obviously not enough capacity on the range to house both teams at the same time, nor is there capacity at the putting green plus the range for the teams in addition to the public. So I view the short game area as providing us, number 1, some optionality with and for the high school students that practice. but also it's the final golf experience and amenity that we need to truly make the course currently continue to differentiate the course. So I would love to see an improvement plan of the short game area in 2025.
Thanks, John. Ken, I know that John, as he stated, has talked about this as a concern the last couple of years. Do we have any plans in the near future to do anything with the short game area?
Yeah, John, I mean, that's something that Jeff and I have talked about. Obviously with the capital plan that we put in place this year, with the focus being on the irrigation system, some of that stuff has been tabled. It is something that I'm sure us as a staff and the board can discuss different options and revisit that if you'd like to do that. But at the current time, it's kind of just in the discussion level with us. Logistically, you know, the area that you're talking about right there, that area doesn't necessarily provide a lot of additional space for an enlarged practice area. Maybe it'd be a different option on the property that we might need to discuss. Just in terms, that's at the highway for Jeff in terms of his maintenance equipment coming in and out. So obviously that discussion can happen for sure.
You know,
I think you'd have a lot of happy golfers. I think you'd have some happy high school teams. It's a real need in my opinion. It's a sight for sore eyes.
John, I'm going to have Dave meet with Ken and Jeff and kind of strategize on some options we could do. Is your opinion this has to be done in 25, or are you open to 25 or 26?
I'm open to 25 or 26. I just want to get a plan together.
Okay, then what we can do is have Dave start working with the golf staff on coming up with some options and bring back those options at a future meeting for the board to discuss so that we can plan it out as to what the best way of taking on this last piece of improvement there for the short game could be.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with Commissioner Dahlstrom and support, you know, if he wants it in 26, that's fine, or 25. But I support what the Commissioner, the way he articulated it as well.
I agree. I mean, I think it was nice before that, and then we added the instructional fee, which is an awesome addition, but it's just kind of taken away, and even the short game area not quite what it was before.
Would the board all be comfortable with us coming back with some solutions and looking at this for 2026?
I mean, I agree with Commissioner Dahlstrom that probably 2026 will be a drop dead date. That's my own take on it. I don't know what the other commissioners feel, but definitely within the next 2 years. Commissioner Bender?
I listen, I think that's appropriate. We have a lot going on next year. The irrigation project is going to be significant. And the course is already going to be disrupted. So, I mean, there's two schools of thought there, right? School number thought one, we're already tearing up the course for the irrigation project. What's a little bit of extra project work to increase the size of the short game area? Probably not much. The second school of thought is it could also present additional challenges for the residents that want to utilize the golf course in its full capacity.
Let us have a chance to talk with Jeff and see kind of his thoughts on all that impact too.
Okay.
Just think a little bit outside of the box, right? We know District 58 had to sell a property in the last few years here because they were in need of some money. There's some space behind Puffer over there, and they don't seem to use it. Have we ever considered whether we could make an agreement with District 58 on anything to make room? Because I understand the space issue is a tough nugget to crack.
What space on would that be like where the ball field is right now?
Yeah, but isn't the ball field a little closer to the street? It's not right up against the golf course?
It's right up against the golf.
Oh, it is right up against the golf course.
Yeah.
You know how often I go there. I did go there 3 times this year though. Okay, I'm sorry. In my head that was a little farther away. I was trying to think of some other solutions. But yeah, we have 2026 plan. I think it not prudent to do that when we're already spending 1.9 mil on it next year, potentially 1.9. But I'm got my consensus on the dollar increase on the fees there.
Anything further, Bob?
Else?
You know, in light of the, some of the developments in Mr. Dahlstrom or Commissioner Dahlstrom's, comments, and I withdraw my objection for the $1 fee. That's fine with the capital improvements and some of the other items that we get into, so. John.
Anything more?
Nothing more?
Everybody's okay with the rest of the health presentation?
Okay, are we talking about the reduced fees in November, December too?
Yes, I'll talk about those now. So what we also brought to the board's attention was that the final quarter of next year, 2025, is going to limit the number of holes we're going to be able to have open on the course. The way Jeff and Ken see it going is that one hole would be closed at a time, likely more towards November, December. That time frame brings in about $150,000 to $200,000 in revenue if it's a good year. If the snow holds off and we're not seeing a foot in early October or something. With that, Ken and Jeff were talking and came and spoke with Dave and I some, and their recommendation was to reduce greens fees during this time, $3 across the board. For the lack of that one hole, it would be an 8-hole course essentially instead of a 9-hole course. And with that, to drop the rental for the cart, the motorized cart, if anybody's looking to use that, and that would go from 12 to 10. And we were looking to see if the board was in agreement with that approach and comfortable with us taking that approach the final months of 2025 when that project really takes away from the course.
I think it's considerate and fair.
Nicely done.
Okay, thank you. Good.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the final topic on new business is the IAPD legislative platform.
Wait, Paul.
Oh, I apologize, Paul. I'm just jumping ahead. I'm gonna turn it over to Paul now to go over the capital for the district, which is a few million a year.
Thanks, Eric. So tonight, yeah, we're going to present proposed capital projects for next year for 2025, as well as 2026. I did print out for you this copies of our 5-year capital improvement plan. We'll go over that a little bit more at the end, but this is also available in the memo that was uploaded to board pack. This 5-year plan was at the end of that as well. So for next year, starting at Dorhofer Park, we're looking at the tennis and pickleball courts there. These courts were last resurfaced, a complete resurfacing in 2014. And then we did color coat them again in 2022. That was, we wanted to have them looking good and in good condition as we were moving into the McCollum project. We were going to be shutting down all of the tennis courts at McCollum Park. So in 2022, we color coded these existing courts. We have had surface cracking issues with this particular court. These courts, we believe, due to subsurface groundwater. When we resurfaced them in 2014, very soon after, we had water actually coming up through the surface from underneath, which caused cracking of the surface. We did some drainage improvements in 2017 around the outside of the courts, trying to get some drainage pipes to try to give that water a place to go. We believe that has helped. Since that time, we haven't had as much water. We haven't seen as much water actually coming up through the surface, but we do continue to see cracking of the surface. So we're looking at ways of addressing these courts to improve the surface there. If we were to completely remove the courts and rebuild them from scratch, start over essentially with new courts, put new drainage underneath them and rebuild the courts completely, that would likely be an $850,000 project we're estimating. What we're proposing as an alternative is actually a surface that would, a modular surface that is laid over the top of the existing courts. And that is estimated at $375,000. That does include that price, the $375 that's budgeted does include the basketball courts. We would do not only the tennis, but also the basketball courts that are just outside the tennis courts. So you'll see in the picture here, the condition of the current courts, they are still, the color coding is still vibrant. The color is good. If you were to drive by these courts on Bernard Road and look down at the courts, you would say those look pretty good. Again, it was just 2 years ago that we did that color coding. But as you get on the courts, then you really start to see the extent of the cracking that is throughout all of the tennis courts and the pickleball courts. You can see examples of those cracks here. Some places where even the surface is flaked off. The picture on the left there, the color coding has even flaked off. And so at some point, these cracks do begin to impact the play on the courts. You know, early on, they're very small, and so they don't impact the ball necessarily. But they do start to widen and start to impact the play. So for these reasons, we're looking at doing a overlay onto these courts. So what we're proposing is a product that is a tile product. We have an example of it here. I don't know if you want to pass it down so they can take a look at it, but we've seen this actually. We have talked to other park districts that have started using this. Naperville has used it on tennis and pickleball courts. Oswego Land, Carroll Stream, several park districts have started using it. I would say it's not considered to be the premier tennis and pickleball surface, right? What we have sort of at McCollum Park, the color coding on asphalt is kind of the standard for tennis and pickleball courts in our area. But this does create a similar court experience. We visited some courts actually in Oak Brook, and the picture on the right, you'll see that's one I took because they do have it on a basketball court there as well. The picture on the left is just a stock photo from a website, but it shows you an example of pickleball courts with this tile overlay. So this is a product there. We've been talking to one particular manufacturer, the Sport Court Midwest, and their product that they have for the tennis and pickleball courts is called Sport Game Pickleball. And it is, it's the official, what is it? The official modular court system of USA Pickleball. So it's accepted by, the Pickleball Association. And so we believe they would have a similar playing experience to the color-coded surface. That does come with, it does have a 15-year warranty, this particular product that we were looking at. The nice thing is that it basically goes over the existing courts that we have there today. They would just put a black coating over it, so you no longer see the color of the courts below. Seal, fill in any of the cracks, put the black coating over it, and then this goes over the top. So this allows the water to pass through. It would be playable after rain. The other advantage that they advertise that we've heard is that it is actually easier on the knees than a typical surface. So we're proposing this particular product for Dorhofer Park. Again, we wouldn't use this. We just redid our courts at McCollum Park, so we have kind of our premier courts essentially would be McCollum. We also have 2 tennis courts at Randall Park, which we would look at potentially recolor coding those to keep the same surface that we've had there. But here again, the issue being the cracking of the surface and the challenges we've had there, we feel that this could be an alternative product to use for the surfacing. The last point I'll make on the tennis and pickleball courts at Dorhofer is just number of courts. That this is the current setup of our courts where we have 4 tennis and 2 pickleball. We are considering, we could look at taking out one more of the tennis courts. So we would have 3 tennis and 4 pickleball. That would be kind of an alternative scenario at this location to increase the number of pickleball. The pricing we have also includes adding a barrier, a fence essentially between the north-south courts. So right now, I think one of the challenges, one of the things we've heard from people who have played there is that they want to have a barrier in between the courts, north-south, so that if a ball gets by, it doesn't end up interrupting the game that's playing next door. So we would add that between the courts, just east-west across between those courts on north-south.
Enough room for that?
There, we might have to shift that northern one up a little bit to make a little more room there in between. But we believe there'd be at McCollum, we actually increased the footprint of the courts there to have a lot more space on the outsides. This would be a little tighter because we're not looking at expanding the footprint of the courts. We wouldn't have quite as much space outside of the courts north-south as McCollum, but we believe we can accommodate the.
When we were talking pickleball long ago, we're going to be put in McCollum. We had some resident or person in attendance that talked about standards, how far you need from court to fence.
Yeah.
I don't know if this, just want to make sure that would need it.
Yeah, we would need to check again, but I think, again, like I mentioned, I think we might be able to adjust a little bit.
And on the other courts that you looked at that are within the area, do you have any idea how long they've been in place?
Let's see. So Naperville, I think, has been at least a year.
Let's say a year or 2. So Dave and I actually went out to Naperville. We both live in Naperville. We just wanted to see how it was to play on it. I think we both agreed that it was definitely a bit easier on the knees, just because those tiles move a little bit. But when you're stopping, you have a little bit of give to your knees. I'd say the ball moves slightly slower, not anything that would be detrimental to a game, but is a little bit different surface, no different than if you're playing on clay, grass, or pavement. I believe Naperville said they had theirs in a year, a little over a year, and I believe they were having some problems kind of like us with the water table underneath or something, right?
It's on top of a reservoir.
On top of a reservoir. So that was one of the reasons they had gone to it.
Very similar with issues with their court surface, having water and cracking that then they.
Well, the village did that work along Bernard like a year ago. That was done.
It's actually been a couple of years now. We think that's probably helped a little bit as well. In addition to the drainage we did, but then also they're catching more of the water upstream that was coming down. So we think that probably helped as well. That another reason why we're not seeing as much water coming up through the courts.
So what was that in 2017 was rather minimal in terms of trying to address the water issue.
Correct.
My recollection was that we did the resurfacing in 2022 because we knew McCollum was going to be out of commission. And so we wanted to have something a little bit nicer at Dorhofer, knowing that the conditions there don't really allow for nice courts. But at the time, I thought the 5-year plan included then coming back to Dorhofer and doing what was needed to be done to make those courts of equal quality to the ones at McCollum.
The full renovation.
So you're proposing that we don't follow through with what we had discussed previously.
Correct. I think one thing we're looking at is trying to free up money also for we've got a project at McCollum. The following year, we're looking at that bigger project there. And so I think we felt like this was one way to still put down a new surface that's a playable surface without spending the full rehab, the full renovation cost.
Yeah.
When staff started talking about this, I think it was something new out there in the last year or 2 that you're really starting to see catch on slowly. And it was a way to spread out the ability to spread out our dollars for additional capital. It allows us to invest in a couple playgrounds and other items this year that if we do the full construction, which we could, if that's the board's directive, we would have to make cuts to other areas of capital.
So I could see people on the north side of town thinking, why don't I get a nice, tennis court? Because that, I mean, just touching that surface, it just doesn't feel like that would act at all the same way a standard court does. And you mentioned it's a little bit different, but it's playable. But people who are serious about tennis want to play on a pretty consistent court, and that's the consistent type of court that we have in this country at least. So I could see that people want to have that near their homes. Even though we would still be offering a premier tennis experience over at McCollum. So I'm not sure.
Can I interject?
Yeah, thanks.
I think what I'd like to do is I'd also like to potentially visit Naperville or a park that has the sport court down. I think I've played on it before, but I'd like to see it again. And I can certainly do that on my own schedule, and very much happy to. Alternatively, if we as a board and staff wanted to go together, I think that also could be interesting because it would allow for the free-flowing dialogue around each of our observations and experiences. So I know that's what I'm thinking about in my head. I played on sport courts before. I think Brett's right. It's not the traditional experience. It's not terrible either, but I'd like to see it before I believe it.
And I like the idea of a field trip. We're just gonna be mindful of the number of commissioners that show up and talk about park business.
Yes. Of course.
Yeah, but I agree. I would like to see them also myself, and I don't know, maybe hit a ball or so or something. If you could just send us,
We can certainly.
Ranch View.
Thank you.
Okay. You know what? I can go on my own.
Yeah, I would go.
I can fire up my little car and go over there.
And we can get you a list of
Yes.
several in the area of other park districts besides just the one in Naperville.
No, I think it's a good idea.
That'd be great, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions on Dorhofer before we move on to another?
No, I mean, I agree with Commissioner Bender. I think that, once we take a look at it, I don't have any commitment. So much questions, but concerns is whether or not back in that time, if we did promise that area that we have full. And I understand we switch around priorities. We're supposed to be flexible and instead of stagnant, but I'd like to have the opportunity to go there again for myself and then see the court and then make if I have any other questions, concerns.
Sure. Okay. So moving on, for next year, we have a couple of playground renovations proposed. The two we're looking at are Fishel Park and Sterling and Davis Park. So Sterling and Davis is now our oldest playground, now that we are currently replacing Loy and Northside playgrounds. That makes Sterling and Davis our oldest one, was installed in 1999. Fishel was a little more recently in 2005. So it's not as old, but it does see a lot of use, not just at our events, but also the church next door uses it daily as part of their preschool and school age programs. The one at Fishel, also the type of playground equipment, it's the only one we have that is this brand, and it hasn't held up as well as some of the other brands that we use. The one at Sterling and Davis, for example, is one of the better brands, and which is why it's lasted as long as it has. But Fishel, again, a different brand, has not held up as well. So these projects, like we're doing this year with Constitution, Loy, and Northside, the surfacing, we would change from the mulch to either poured rubber or synthetic turf surfacing. So that's a change from previous playgrounds before this year. We would also include, we'd always do any ADA improvements that are needed as part of those renovation projects. And then Fischel Park does have a block retaining wall on 2 sides of it that we need to make sure is in good shape, and a curb that may need some repair or replacement. Those are 2 playgrounds. Any questions on those 2 playgrounds?
No, Paul, I don't have a question. On Fischel, we don't have an opportunity to expand at all, do we?
So there's space to the west. There is a large tree there.
Yep.
Just outside the playground that would be a shame to lose. There is space within the playground that's not currently used. So just west of this play structure in the photo, to the right of this photo, there is a space where I believe originally I found the original plans from 2005, and there was supposed to be another piece there. I don't know if it was like a spring rider or something was there that either got removed or didn't get installed. And so there's actually a little bit more space to do a slightly larger play structure than we have today. But in terms of expanding the footprint, it would mean, you know, we really probably wouldn't go any further south into the park, because that would start to take away seating for concerts.
Yep.
The only other way to go would be west in there, and as I mentioned, there's a large, nice, mature tree there today. So
because I think this park is utilized heavily. I think we've all seen hundreds of kids at this park on a Tuesday night during the concerts, and I think it'd be ideal if we can utilize the space to accommodate more kids.
I think we will be able to do a slightly larger play structure than what's there today. Yes.
Yeah. And does it make sense if we are trying to reallocate some funds next year to help out with the McCollum project, and the board ultimately decides that full-on tennis courts for Dorhofer is better than the modular design? Is the Fischel Park project one that makes more sense to wait until we can do it real nice and expand that park? Because yeah, it gets heavily used. That is just mobbed on those Tuesday night concerts, which is wonderful. But I would hate to see us do Fischel Park and not be able to give it the upgrades it deserves.
Yeah, we could certainly look at that if we were to switch gears on the tennis courts. This may be one that we would push off. Any other questions on the playgrounds?
Well, you know, just out of curiosity, getting back to Fischel, how dilapidated is Sterling and Davis?
I don't think I would consider it dilapidated. I think it's held up fairly well. The concern is being 25 years old at this point.
Sure.
That you start to have to replace, parts start to break.
Okay.
That we end up having to spend more time and money replacing pieces on the play structures. So that's getting to be fairly old for a playground. 25 years, I think, is.
Are we having a harder time finding those pieces because of the age of it? Or are we still able to find them readily?
We're still able to get them.
We're still able to get them. It's just, again, it's between, you know, the standards and things have changed over the years. There could be some issues from that standpoint.
But where I'm going with this, Kevin, is that if we decide, Kevin and Paul, if we decide to move funds around, which park would take priority? Would it be, you know, I mean, should we start having a contingency plan where, you know, Sterling and Davis, because the usage may drop down in priority, and then we could put everything in Fischel? I mean, that's a board's direction, but that's the point where I was going at.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
It does, and Sterling, and no offense to Sterling Davis, that area there, but if it's not the same usage as Fishel, and as we all have seen and can attest to, that park does get utilized. So that's where I was going. So if you were to recommend priorities and moving things around.
Yeah, I think we do have a number of years ago, we did a playground assessment. We looked at all of our playgrounds, so we kind of ranked them and created a priority, an order of replacement priority. And I believe, again, that was done a number of years ago. We've talked about updating that. But Sterling and Davis was, I believe, above Fishel, mostly due to the age.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it would be something for the board to consider if they feel like Fishel is a higher priority.
So if you say you want to postpone one of those,
Yeah.
you know, you can't, it's got to be like 2 years, because the next year everything's going in the column.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Yeah, you're adding at least 2 more. Yeah, 2 more years. That's a good point to the age before it would actually get replaced.
I believe with these parks, you have delayed them in the past. Is that correct? Because we used to replace probably every 12 to 15.
8 to 10 years, and then now we moved it from 12 to 15, and now we have playgrounds that are over 20. So just because we pushed them off for quite a bit.
What is the typical recommended standard?
So Illinois Department or Illinois Natural Resources, as part of the the OSLAD grant, they have kind of a list of expected lifespan of different park amenities, and playgrounds they list as 15 years is kind of their standard. Depending on the type of equipment, we see them lasting 20 years. This particular brand, for example, at Sterling and Davis, it's the same stuff we had at Loy. It lasts 20 years. It has lasted 20 years. It starts to have some issues when you get beyond that. So I think at this time, we're trying to get to our playgrounds to be 15 to 20 years old. But because as Eric and Kevin were saying, we did kind of take a pause there were a number of years where we weren't doing replacements. And so now they're starting to age. We're having more of them that are at least 20 years old.
Because we have so many elements at Fishel Park, and because it's such a central part of this town, have we ever considered doing an OSLAD project that incorporates Fishel Park in the future? Again, as John said, I mean, I would like to make that park bigger. We don't want to lose that tree, but it seems like we got some chance.
Yeah. And
I would hate to do Fishel Park. I don't want to say on the cheap, but like do it and miss an opportunity to, again, give it the attention it deserves. So has that ever been a plot that we've kicked around OSLAD ideas for?
So with OSLAD in particular,
or the tourist one, the tourist thing that we can get to. Grants. Is there a grant through the county you can, if it's a tourist attraction, you can get some grant money for?
I'm not familiar with that one, but
that was a new law passed 2-3 years ago.
Okay.
I know there's some tourism ones out there. I think there's certain requirements we'd have to look into a little bit.
Yeah. I know with the OSLAD grant, which is specifically a park grant for park renovations and replacements and new things, they typically for a grant application to score enough points to qualify or to beat out other applicants, it should have multiple pieces, multiple things, and to just be replacing a playground typically wouldn't be enough.
No.
Like if you call them,
I wouldn't think about that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you add that fence that we talked about a couple of years, or last year, the year before that, you upgrade the speakers on the stage. It seems like, do we add some formalized seating maybe for people? It seems that it is a park that could have 5 elements to it if we got creative. And I was just wondering if we ever thought about, making that an even nicer place than it already is.
We haven't gone to that extent of trying to turn that into a grant project, but it's something we could take a look at. And there may be other grants.
Yeah, well, the other the tourism one, the definition of tourism was pretty loose. So it seems like you could justify anything that brings people in from out of town. If concerts are going to attract people from Wheaton, it's tourism. right? So it seems that when I read that bill, it created some opportunities for us. To go back to find it.
Okay. Anything else on the playgrounds? All right. Moving on. The next one is the roof on the administration office building. So similar to what we did here at the rec center, we replaced the HVAC system, and then the next year we did the coating on the roof here, white coating, to extend the life of the roof. Essentially, so we typically wait until after the work's done on the HVAC. Similar thing with the administration roof, where it's starting to decline. But it's in good enough shape that we could coat it with this this liquid applied coating, and then that extends the life of the roof. It has the 12-year warranty. It also has there's an option to, at the end of the 12 years, to coat again and add another and get another 12 years. So this would be coating the roof of the administration building. Questions on?
I hate putting money into that building, but it seems like it needs it to stand up.
And this is, I mean, compared to replacing the roof, this is a very minimal in terms of cost. This is much less than if it were to continue to deteriorate and we had to actually do a full replacement would be much more. Yep. So, all right. And then next we have at Lyman Woods, replacement of a boardwalk. So this is a 180-foot long boardwalk. It's on the east side of the preserve, and I've got it on the map there if you can see. So essentially, you go down the main walk from the interpretive center, you're heading south, and then the trail splits off to the left and goes down the hill. It's that boardwalk that goes over to, there's a meadow over there, and it also leads to the prairie cane. That was installed in 2006. It crosses over a creek, one of the creeks that had extensive stream bank stabilization work done a number of years ago. As the level that where it was installed at the time was well above water levels at that time. We have seen a little bit higher levels of water occasionally and some debris as it's coming down the creek that is built up underneath that has caused water to kind of pool. And so a replacement boardwalk here, we would look at raising it up slightly higher to allow water to get underneath it a little bit better. And additionally, this boardwalk is 5 feet wide. The staff at Lyman Woods has a gator that they use to bring materials out to different areas of the preserve for work that they do out there. And that gator won't fit on the 5 foot wide boardwalk, so we would look at making it 6 feet wide to allow that the gator to use that. So this would be replacement of an existing boardwalk.
Policy or ordinance on vehicles that are allowed for people with multiple disabilities says they're supposed to be limited to half the width of a path that are being used. So making the 6 feet would allow for a 36-inch wide wheelchair to get through there without violating our ordinance. Now that I'm aware that we have this very specific ordinance on those devices. So yeah, in favor.
Hey, Paul, could we put steel footings in?
So it does have, I believe this one has the metal pan. They are steel pans, are the footings that sit on the ground, and they actually don't. And that's what we've done on most of our boardwalks out there. Rather than digging into the ground to put a footing, they make these spread footing, these pans that then the timbers are come off of it, and so it just kind of spreads on the ground. I believe that's what this has. Do you remember, Kevin? I believe it has the pans that we would actually reuse those and just rebuild the timber part of it.
Okay, got it.
Any other questions on boardwalk? And then a couple of planning projects that we wanted to highlight. We're proposing for next year. The first is here, the recreation center, potential renovation, design drawings. So Bill is currently working with, I believe, 3 architects that he's working with them to get concepts, ideas for ways to reallocate spaces within the building, reconfigure. Once we've agreed upon a concept, once we have a concept that we want to move ahead with, the next step then is to hire the architect to prepare more detailed drawings. And so that's what we would be budgeting for next year, would be these drawings that are then used to prepare detailed cost estimates. So we would know what potential cost would be for that project. And those drawings would also could be used for grant applications that we would be looking at trying to find some, some funding assistance for if it's a major renovation project.
Bill believes this could be a good option for the park grant, and that would fund up to potentially 90% of it if everything qualifies. And that would be a project we could work with C-SPAR on to look into that in the future years.
Then the other project is back at Lyman Woods, looking at preparing a site master plan, a park site master plan for all of Lyman Woods. So we have a master plan that was previously completed in 1999. Since then, we have a number of projects that have been completed. The interpreter center was built since that plan was done. All of the stream bank stabilization projects, the 3 large stabilization projects that were completed out there. So this would allow us to kind of take a look at where we are and prioritize future restoration projects moving ahead. This is kind of it would be an environmental consultant who would look at the ecology of the site and the types of vegetation and all of that, and then help us to determine where we should focus our efforts on future restoration. This again would be helpful for grant applications. In particular, I believe one of the next priorities would be the large wetland that's kind of at the center of Lyman Woods, that we haven't done any restoration work to that yet. And if that were identified as a goal in the master plan, that's helpful then for seeking grant assistance with those as well.
Is this $75,000 because they go there and take samples and test things? It's a big price tag.
It is, and I'm hopeful that the price would be closer to 50. We put a little extra in there because we may also want to have them look at like the area right around the interpretive center, looking at possibilities for expanding the parking lot, where would make the most sense to potentially expand the parking lot. If we were to grow our programming, where would be the spaces that would make the most sense to grow kind of, and that kind of thing. And that's a little bit another level of analysis that if we include that might increase the cost a little bit.
And it seemed this maybe slightly off topic, but I know that Commissioner Lunt was talking about using different types of surfaces in the parking lot to let water go through. It seems like if we were to pay for that anyway, this would be the place that we would need something like that. Especially if you're adding new parking, that's when it makes the most sense to look at the permeable pavers, because it helps you. It's an environmentally positive, a better way of doing things in the parking lot, but it also helps you from a stormwater standpoint, that anytime you're adding parking lots, you're adding impervious surface and you typically have to add detention. But with the permeable pavers, they put the detention underneath the parking lot in the stone that's underneath the parking lot. So it helps you. You don't have to impact as much space if you don't have to build a separate detention basin next to the parking lot. So absolutely, this would be call out something like that. Is like
it would, yeah. I think that most likely they would recommend something like that for doing that. That again, if we were to expand the parking lot, that would be something that we would need to go back to the Forest Preserve and get their approval essentially. If we have a plan that was prepared by a reputable environmental consulting firm that says this is an appropriate expansion of the parking lot, that helps us then when we go to the forest preserve to make our case for making that improvement. So
And when we were over there weeks ago, and they sprayed the pathways, treated the pathways. One of the things we observed is that we have all this beautiful vegetation, yet they just sprayed right over, you know, in some parts, which I think can't go without. I mean, obviously it's part of the process, but it just seemed not fitting with that brand over there. Like, it's a beautiful natural area. It's fantastic to take pictures and see wildlife, and then we have this concrete or this asphalt. One of the things I'd like to bring up, I know this is about budgeting, but it's goes to the master plan, is to have the board visit this memorandum of understanding between the village and the reserve and us. This was something designed 30 years ago, many boards ago. I mean, it's something to consider and discuss whether or not keep things the same, whether or not we want to approach the other governmental bodies. But it's just, my concern is that I'd like to have autonomous rule, if you will, for lack of a better choice of words, we do all the heavy lifting, those properties. And again, it's just for consideration if the board would like to talk about it, but I would like to see us as part of the comprehensive plan, whether or not we stay the same or go forward. Again, that's up to the board to decide. Please get a conversation going.
In a future meeting, we can discuss more about that.
Absolutely.
Is that in board pack now?
You know, if the MOU is in there, I don't think so.
What was it?
The MOU for the Lyman Woods.
I don't think.
I don't think it's in there.
You email?
I think Bill emailed it to you.
Well, we have a number of these agreements that are out there, right, with the village and, you know, and I.
For Lyman Woods or in general?
In general.
In general.
And it'd be nice, what I'd like to see or have the opportunity, not for now, to discuss a budget, but I think the board should have the opportunity to use some of these MOUs that are in collecting dust someplace and revisit them and see whether or not they're worth revisiting, or at least have a conversation about it. I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but you know, I know there's a number of properties at the village that we're maintaining for the village, and whether or not, you know, just revisiting that relationship moving forward.
I'd certainly be open to a conversation. I'd like to read the intergovernmental agreements beforehand, and so whether that's a topic of conversation for a future workshop meeting or an ad hoc discussion, I'd be supportive of both.
Okay, we'll talk that over and look into a future mini meeting or so.
Yeah. Any other questions on these two items?
None for me, Paul.
All right. And then we always just like to mention some of the other capital considerations. For example, contingency. Each year we typically budget some money that's for things that may come up during the year if one of our projects has something that happens, goes over budget, material cost increases, things like that, or if there's a new project that comes up that we want to try to address, we typically budget $50,000 to $75,000. For 2025, we're proposing $50,000. We also have vehicles and equipment, which Kevin manages again at $250,000 that we've been trying to maintain for a few years now.
I think we've maintained 250 for probably about 6 to 8 years. We're not there yet, but in the next few years, we're gonna have to look at adjusting those numbers as vehicles and equipment go up in cost.
And we'll be bringing that back in November, I believe, to the actual plan of what we're looking to purchase. So.
And then we have our ADA improvements. We typically budget $100,000 a year to address ADA deficiencies that are identified in our ADA transition plan. And we're looking at bringing that a draft list of projects to the workshop, the October 3rd workshop meeting for consideration. And then lastly, there's always the possibility of developer donations if there are new condos or apartments that are built in town. Unfortunately, there don't appear to be any big ones on the horizon at the moment. There's one that we may see a little bit of money in early, we're hoping by early 2025, that we're proposing that if we do happen to receive any of those donation funds, that we would kind of put that aside for that potential the big project at Apollo.
Paul, that has to be commercial development, correct?
I'm sorry?
That has to be commercial development?
Residential.
It's only residential.
I believe so. I think it's whenever you're adding potential residents to the community, there's a developer donation, there's money that goes towards the school district to offset the additional cost of those additional children being added to the school system, as well as money to us for park system.
Correct. This all goes back to adding to the services necessary in the community, and that gives us a jump start before any taxes start coming in for those new residents.
Got it. Yeah, I recall Longfellow developer donations. I just didn't know if it was also inclusive of commercial development.
So for example, there's a potential, they've just finished new Village Hall. Now they're tearing down the old Village Hall, and where old Village Hall was, the village is working with a potential developer to do an apartment building there. That's probably 2-3 years out, before it's all the way through the process of planning and zoning and permits and everything else. And assuming that the economy, that it's still the right conditions for something like that. But that would be an example of one where we could see a pretty good amount of money coming from that.
It was taking forever.
At a Village Hall?
Yeah. It doesn't make much progress. I don't know. It takes a long time.
I was wondering that myself.
What'd they find it there?
Took out like a quarter of it, and it's set like
I was there one of the first days they started, and it looked like they were like going pretty quick, but so that is all of our projects that we are currently proposing for 2025. And then 2026, right now, the only project we have listed in the 5-year plan for 2026 is the McCollum, what we're calling phase 3, playground area renovation. The park was, the McCollum Park was built in the 80s, the mid 80s. And then over the last decade or a little more, we've been renovating different parts of it. Phase 1 being the baseball core baseball area that was done in about 10-12 years ago. And then phase 2 was kind of the tennis court, splash pad, that work. And then the last piece then would be the playground and some of the other amenities just surrounding the playground. That's part of the grant application that has now been submitted. So our grant application has been sent in to the state. So now we wait and see. We'll get $600,000 towards this project. And then lastly, again, included a 5-year plan, what we would propose for a 5-year capital plan. I'm going to switch to a slightly larger one here. Oops. Share. So you can see the complete list of projects in 2025 that we just discussed, totaling on the right there, 1.3 million. McCollum Park, we're showing right now for 2026, the total capital of 1.45, assuming at this point, a $2 million project minus a $600,000 grant, OSLED grant, still including a contingency there. In 2027, we're showing $1 million in projects, couple of playgrounds, parking improvements, and some fencing at Belmont Prairie. That would be the perimeter, 3 sides of Belmont Prairie that have chain link fencing that's starting to have issues that needs to be replaced. In 2028, again, looking at we have 1 playground in that one, some of our larger backstops that need to be updated. The bigger ones that we have at Gilbert Park, Memorial Park, and the West Field at Whitlock, as well as some other baseball outfield fences, and looking at irrigation at Memorial Park. Also proposing in 28 renovation or replacement of the restroom at Gilbert Park. That one's had some challenges lately with the block. It's essentially a block wall structure that even the block is starting to deteriorate. So we need to start thinking about possibly replacing that restroom building. And then in 2029, again, a couple of playgrounds and quite a few parking lots in 2029, showing 1.25 million. There is a back side to this plan of the sheet that we call the unfunded projects for capital consideration. So these are projects that would become due within the next 5 years, that if funding were available, that we would look to. These would be kind of the next things on the list to go after if additional funds were available. And then just a note at the bottom that we don't have on this list. We don't have any large renovations. Like if we were to do a large renovation of this facility, that's not currently shown, within the plan or any other facilities. Like if we were to renovate Lincoln Center, Lyman Woods Interpretive Center. It also does not take into account potential bond funds that would be available when the spray ground, the McCollum spray ground bond does expire within this 5-year window, but we're not showing that as potentially at this time.
That expires, I believe the final payment is December of 27. So there'd be potential opportunity for another bond at that time that could go towards capital. That's the rollover effect of the capital bonds to allow you to fund additional projects like this list and or some of the larger facility projects that would help along with other avenues for revenue. Typically, that's not built into your regular annual capital improvement plan, just because the building facilities are so much more than a typical capital project.
And that's all I have this evening.
So,
any questions? Thank you.
Very, very thorough question. Thank you.
Paul and I took some notes, so we will follow up together and also with Bill when he returns back next week. Get some more information together for the board, potentially revisit this at one of the October meetings. Keep in mind that when we do budget for capital for the actual budget, it's dollar amount. It's not necessarily projects. That still can be changed as we move forward. So that gives us a little bit of flexibility on time going forward so we can provide some more information to the board.
Meetings next month. So 2 meetings next month?
We have 2 meetings next month in October 3rd and 17th. The final item we have under new business, now that Paul has had the chance to go, my apologies, Paul. Bill did attach a memo for the board regarding joint legislative committee. He talked this over with me a little bit, and most of the survey that we fill out for the IAPD, IPRA Joint Legislative Committee is basic questions about the park district that Bill passes around to the directors for us to answer. However, there's 2 areas that he wanted to get feedback from the board on. The first was the legislative platform. When I was talking with Bill, he came up with 2 ideas that he had put on there as recommendations for the board. The first one was to amend the Open Meetings Act to allow for remote participation of board members for personal reasons at specific times of year. So kind of enlarge that from what it is right now. And the second that Bill came up with was to allow contracts longer than 3 years We often do get vendors that seek longer term deals where prices might be able to get driven down some, create some efficiencies. So those were two ideas he had thought we could bring forward on that. He was open to suggestions on those or any other ideas that the board may have.
Okay, so what I alluded to earlier, I don't really want to sign my name to supporting prioritizing making contracts longer than 3 years. I meant to do this before I got here, but I ended up taking a walk from my shack earlier. That 3-year limit has been in legislation since at least 2002. That was as far as I just got back now. I was trying to see where that came from. But as somebody who used to work on the procurement code in this state, the objective behind the 3-year cap was that since most elected officials are elected to 4-year terms, no board can really bind future boards. So even like 5 years might create a contract that somebody who's elected to that board never gets a chance to vote on, never gets a chance to say anything about, and goes all the way until their term is over. So that's why the 3 years, it was created as a protection from a board that might go a little loose, might go a little crazy with something, so that everybody who voted on those contracts can be voted out if it was a bad contract for the board to enter into, and then a new contract can be made. So it's not an arbitrary reason that we have a 3-year limit on there, and I think that there are good government reasons to maintain that 3-year limit so that boards can't go a little crazy without paying the consequences. And our listed reason here is that vendors asked for it, but we weren't elected to represent vendors. We were represented to elect people who live here. So I do understand that our vendors would like that. But there's 7,000 units of local government in this state that are all bound by this 3-year ban. So 3-year limit. We've got a lot of buying power between the 7,000 of us. So if companies want that business, they're just gonna have to suck it up and take 3-year contracts, despite the inconvenience. So I would advocate for not listing that as a priority, because I again believe that it protects the people of the town to not allow us to enter into longer contracts.
Makes complete sense what you just said. Does the rest of the board also?
I concur.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure in speaking with Bill on this previously that he'd have no problem taking that off the agenda. Is the board comfortable with the other one about Open Meetings Act? Allow for more reasons to be able to participate remotely?
I am not. I think that if for a litany of reasons, most importantly, though, it's our job. The elected officials should be here and actively participate. No, I'm not in favor of that whatsoever. I don't know how the consensus the rest of the board feels, but I am not in favor of
I agree. I mean, unless you're traveling for business or have a sick relative or you are sick, which already is allowed. So yeah, I agree. Could be here.
John, any comments on either of those?
I think personal reasons is vague.
I believe that some of the ones that Bill had listed were, give me 1 second. I know I brought this for a reason. It was in the memo, actually.
Did I not read the memo?
Attend Open Meetings Act to allow remote participation of board members for personal reasons at specific times during the calendar year. This would enable board members to participate even if they're on a vacation or at a vacation property.
Well, that's the only two.
Those were the only examples he provided.
Only examples for personal reasons. Okay. Yeah, I'm not necessarily in love with it, to be honest with you.
Okay. Are there any other items that the board would like to be considered for this survey?
I'd love to get 1% of the signatures from the last election instead of 2% of the signatures from the last election. Keep that villager. commissioners get to get 1% of the votes of the last election, but no, I don't. Serious proposals, though. It'd be nice to put fewer signatures.
John, anything on your side?
Nothing for me. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. The last item in regards to this legislative platform is Bill wanted me to confirm and ask the question with everyone. Would any board members like to serve as a member of IAPD, IPRA Joint Legislative Committee in the future?
I would.
I mean, I'm interested. I do legislation all day. Yeah, we don't.
Well, I can defer. You're burning.
No, it's just that multiple people can do it. Not just one per district.
I'd have to confirm. I don't think that there's a limit.
No.
I would have to confirm, if there's a limit, and B, what the time, commitment would be.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I would have some questions about it. I did think about it, but I have some questions about it because the time is finite.
Well, you wrote law. I mean, I don't mind deferring to you. You wrote legislation, so.
I'll tell Bill that you're both interested at this time and we'll gather some more information and send it out.
Move on. Any other visitors? So we'll move on. I will announce that the next Downville Park District Park Board meeting will be held October 3rd, 2024 at the Recreation Center and Multipurpose Room right here. So any need for executive session?
None at this time.
Nothing. Get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Can we have a roll call?
Mr. Lunt,
Aye.
Mr. Bender,
Aye.
Mr. Dahlstrom,
Aye.
Mr. Katsula.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, you made the whole night.
It is. All you got.